Elidor by Garner, 19, The Wasteland. Coincidence, said Roland. That's all you can say. Coincidence. You make me sick. Well, if you think we're traipsing round in that hole, said David, you can think again. But if we find him, everything will be all right, said Roland. I'm too scared, said Helen. You landed us in enough trouble yesterday with your hen-brained ideas, said David. We're not going, and that's flat. Oh, yes, we are, said Roland, and sprinted for the blacked-out street. Roland, you great steaming chud, come back! The voices died behind him. They'll have to come now. They daren't leave me. He ran along the wider streets until his eyes were used to the dark. The moon had risen, and the glow of the city lightened the sky. He twisted down alleyways, running blindly, through crossroads, over bombed sites, and along the streets again. I'll find 'em when they're right in. It'll be easy. They'll be calling after me. The iron railing was heavy. He carried it, hanging at arm's length, and it was beginning to pull his shoulder down. Roland stopped and listened. There was only the noise of the city, a low, constant rumble that was like silence. He was in the demolition area. Roof skeletons made broken patterns against the sky. Now that he was tired, Roland felt less sure of himself. But at the time, it had seemed the only thing to do. He had looked at the three stubborn faces and had known that he could not argue with them any more. It was not a matter of disbelief. They believed him, but they were frightened, and Roland was frightened too. The streets were so quiet. His footsteps echoed on the cobbles. The ruins hemmed him in. Doors and windows stared at him. Abandoned furniture crouched among the rubble. A tin can rattled down a pile of bricks in the shadow of a building. Here, Roland called. I'm here. No answer. Roland went on. The difficulty was that he could never see far in any direction because of the streets. The whole place was a maze of right angles. The other children might be near, but he would miss them, and he was not going to shout again. Roland searched for a place that would be safe to climb and found a staircase on the exposed inner wall of the house. The top step was the highest part of the house. Everything above it, including the bedroom floor, had been knocked down. Roland tested his weight, but the wood was firm, so he went up. He could see little more of the streets from the top than from the ground. Behind him was a double row of backyards. The entry between them showed a cleft. They're bound to come sooner or later, thought Roland. The best thing is to stay put. He sat on the top of the stairs in the moonlight. It was freezing hard. Roofs and cobbles sparkled. Roland felt better. The menace left the streets, and instead he was aware of the quietness as something poised, as if he could always sit here under the moon. But the cold began to ache into him. He wondered if the others had decided to stay in one place and wait until he came. This thought bothered him, and he was still trying to make up his mind when the unicorn appeared at the end of the street. He was moving at a fast trot, and he wheeled about at the crossroad, unsure of the way. Then he came toward Roland. Roland sat there above the street and watched the unicorn pass below him, and he dared not even breathe. The unicorn turned aside to pause at entries and gaps in the walls. He would stand at the threshold of a house, one hoof raised, but always he swung away and on down the street. His mane flowed like a river in the moon. The point of the horn drew fire from the stars. Roland shivered with the effort of looking. He wanted to fix every detail in his mind forever, so that no matter what else happened, there would always be this. The unicorn turned into the next street, and Roland lost him until he heard the clatter of rubble in the entry. And there was the high neck moving between the walls. He hurried down the stairs as quietly as he could, and groped his way through the house to the yard. He climbed over the entry wall as the unicorn reached the far end. Roland went after him. The entry finished in a square of earth and cinders completely enclosed by walls. The unicorn had heard Roland was waiting, alert, in the middle of the square. They both stood motionless, watching each other. Fintorn, said Roland. Fintorn. The unicorn tossed his head. Roland walked forward very slowly. Fintorn. Sing, Fintorn. He was within 20 feet of the unicorn. The nostrils flared. Sing, Fintorn. The unicorn stamped his hoof and his ears dropped flat to his skull. Roland halted. You must sing. You've got to. He took a step forward and the horn plunged toward him. Roland dodged aside and the unicorn went by at a canter, heading for the entry. "No!" Roland shouted and ran after the unicorn. "Wait! You mustn't go!" He caught up with him and tried to turn him. "Hey! Hey! Hey!" He waved his arm. The unicorn stopped. "Whoa, back!" He recognized the lowering of the neck and moved in time. Still, the unicorn did not follow up the thrust, but carried on toward the entry. "Wait!" Roland blocked the way. "Findhorn! Sing!" And he flourished the iron railing, the spear in the unicorn's face. The silver body grew black against the sky as the unicorn reared and brought his hooves thrashing down. Roland flung himself sideways, and the hooves showered him with frozen grit. He scrambled on all floors. "No, Findhorn!" But the unicorn was on him, cruel and merciless. Round and round, spraying cinders. Only Roland's agility saved him. Hooves and horn and teeth, round and round. There could be no end to it, no escape. Roland's nerve failed. He ran for the wall. "Jump!" He heard the voice, and through sweat he saw a hunchbacked shape kneeling on the broad coping stone of wall. "Catch hold!" An arm reached, and he kept, grabbed and half swung, and he leapt, grabbed and half swung, half clawed himself up the wall. "You never learn, do you?" said Nicholas. The stone in the rucksack on his shoulders had nearly overbalanced him when he took Roland's weight. They lay together, not daring to move, while the horn flashed below them. "Where have you come from?" gasped Roland. "I was in the street on the other side, and I heard you beefing." "We've got to make him sing," said Roland. "It's the way to save Elidor. That's what we're here for." "What?" said Nicholas. "That? Sing? Don't make me laugh." "He must. He's got to. He's frightened. You can't blame him." The unicorn was pacing backwards and forwards under the wall. "He doesn't seem frightened to me," said Nicholas. "I'd say he wanted to finish us off." "That's because he saw the spear. He thinks he's being hunted again. Look at those scars all along his flank." "He doesn't give up, does he?" said Nicholas. "I'm glad we don't have to go down there." "But we do," said Roland. "I dropped the spear when I jumped." "That's that, then," said Nicholas. "We'll have to get by on 3 treasures." "But why is the unicorn here in the first place?" "Trying to go back, I think," said Roland. He knows this is one of the gates through. I was watching him in the street." "Have you seen David and Helen?" "No," said Roland. "Aren't they with you? We lost each other crossing a bombed site." "Oh." "Yes, you've made a right mess of things one way or another," said Nicholas. "We must find them," said Roland. "You don't say. Well, where are they?" Nicholas swept his arm to include the whole city. The row of houses they were on was at the edge of the demolition area. On the other side, from where the unicorn was waiting, lay the open wasteland. Roland looked across the frozen landscape. He started, nearly falling off the wall. "There," he said. "There they are." 2 figures were running together toward the houses. "Thank goodness for that. Ahoy, David, Helen, here." "Hello," shouted a voice. "That's David," said Roland. "He's in the street." "Then who are those 2?" said Nicholas. But by now the figures were near enough for Roland and Nicholas to see the cloaks, and the moon gleamed on the spears in the wasteland. And that is the end of chapter 19.